The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the human delegation's vessels appeared on the monitoring screens. Ambassador Zixthar of the Preluvian Concordat felt his secondary heart skip their rhythm. The three ships emerging from quantum space were unlike anything he had expected. They were damaged, scorched, and unmistakably stained with the frozen residue of what could only be biological matter across their hulls. "By the eternal void," whispered Counselor Maressa, her crystalline form refracting the dim light in patterns of obvious distress. "What battle have they emerged from?" The humans had been silent for 6 rotations. Their initial application for council membership had been met with the standard bureaucratic processing, but then their communications had ceased entirely. The intelligence networks reported nothing. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from their corner of the galaxy. Now they had returned. The lead ship, designated UES Indomitable, bore scorch marks that told stories of weapons fire from at least 7 different technology signatures. Its armor plating was breached in multiple sections, hastily welded with what appeared to be materials scavenged from other vessels. But it was the dark streaks across the hull, visible even through the vacuum of space, that made the assembled delegates uncomfortable. Captain Sarah Chen stepped through the airlock into the council chamber, and the assembled representatives finally understood what they were witnessing. Her uniform was clean, but her face told the story her ships could not. There were new lines around her eyes, a hardness that hadn't existed in the preliminary holographic conferences 6 rotations ago. Behind her walked 6 officers, each bearing similar expressions of exhausted determination. "Honored Council," Chen began, her voice steady despite the obvious fatigue. "I apologize for our delayed arrival. We encountered complications." "Complications?" Ambassador Zixthar found his voice, though it came out higher than he intended. "Captain Chen, your vessels appear to have fought through a war zone. We detected no conflict in your territorial space. What happened?" Chen's jaw tightened. "You wouldn't have detected anything, Ambassador. The conflict took place in the Kepler 442 system, far beyond your sensor network's range. We were ambushed by the Vexnari swarm. The chamber erupted in chaos. The Vexnari swarm was the galaxy's nightmare made manifest, a species of hive-minded predators that had consumed 17 civilizations over the past millennium. They were the reason the Galactic Council had fortified borders, the reason peaceful species huddled together in mutual defense pacts. They were also the reason the Council had established the neutral zone, a vast buffer of space that no one was meant to cross. "That's impossible," High Arbiter Kolvek spoke for the first time, his ancient voice resonating through the chamber. "No species has survived direct contact with a swarm fleet, and Kepler 442 is deep within the neutral zone. What were you doing there?" Captain Chen pulled up a holographic display. 3 rotations ago, we detected a distress signal. It was automated, weak, but it was clearly from a civilized species. We triangulated its origin to a small colony in the Kepler system. You violated the neutral zone for a distress signal? Counselor Maressa's crystalline body flickered with amber hues of disbelief. "That zone exists for everyone's protection. The risk of drawing swarm attention was already realized," Chen interrupted, her tone sharp. "When we arrived, we found the colony, or what was left of it. The Vexnari had already attacked. 73,000 beings, Ambassador. 73,000 souls crying out for help while the galaxy did nothing because they had the misfortune of settling in the wrong piece of space. The silence that followed was absolute. We found survivors." Chen continued, her voice softening slightly. 812 individuals from a species that isn't even represented in this council. They called themselves the Lirani. They had fled persecution in their home system and sought refuge where they thought no one would follow. They were wrong. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed tactical recordings. The council watched as 3 human vessels, already battered from the initial encounter, turned to face a swarm fleet that outnumbered them 7-1. What followed was not the clean, strategic warfare the council was accustomed to observing. It was brutal, desperate. Human ships rammed swarm vessels when their weapons ran dry. They detonated their own munitions at point-blank range, sacrificing armor and hull integrity for each kill. They used debris fields as weapons, gravitational wells as traps, and their own damaged ships as bait, and somehow, impossibly, they won. "We lost 147 crew members," Chen said quietly. "The Lirani survivors are currently in medical facilities on Earth, receiving treatment and asylum. The biological matter you see on our hulls is Vexnari. We didn't have time or resources for a proper cleaning before making our appointment here. We figured it was more important to arrive on time than to arrive pretty. Ambassador Zixthar realized he had been holding his breath. Around the chamber, the same stunned silence persisted. You violated the neutral zone. High Arbiter Kolvex finally spoke, though his voice lacked its earlier accusatory tone. You engaged the swarm directly. You risked exposing your homeworld to their attention. Yes, Chen agreed simply. We did all of those things, why? The question hung in the air. Captain Chen looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of beings from dozens of species, each representing civilizations millions of years older than humanity. Because they asked for help, she said. Because 73,000 people doesn't become an acceptable loss just because they're on the wrong side of a line you drew on a map. Because we heard them screaming, and we decided that whatever consequences came from responding were better than living with the consequences of doing nothing. She straightened her uniform, blood-soaked ship still visible through the observation windows behind her. Humanity formally requests admission to the Galactic Council. We understand we've broken your protocols. We acknowledge we've operated outside your established boundaries, but we also believe that if this council stands for civilization, for the protection of sentient life, then maybe it's time someone reminded you what that actually means. The vote came 3 hours later. For the first time in council history, the decision was unanimous. Humanity was welcomed not despite their bloodied arrival, but because of it. Because sometimes the galaxy needed to be reminded that the measure of civilization wasn't in its age or its technology, but in what it was willing to bleed for, and humanity, young and reckless and impossibly stubborn, had shown them exactly that.